Welcome to Unlocking High Performance, a podcast for leaders who believe great results should never come at the expense of their people. I'm Jason Lortzen, an advisor to CEOs and leadership teams who want to accelerate performance without burning people out. Today, my guest is Spencer Douglas. Spencer is the Chief Marketing Officer of BZI, a leader in construction mega projects across the U.S. Spencer leads efforts to elevate the company's brand and strengthen its reputation with industry partners nationwide. Spencer, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you, Jason.
Well, we met in, I think it was March of 2025, if I remember my dates correctly, at the USA Today Top Workplaces National Awards event. I was there to speak. You were there to pick up some hardware and participate in the festivities. And then this year we reconnected again at Nashville at the same event. We were doing the same things again. And I'm really, through our conversations, I'm really fascinated about the journey that your organization is on, particularly given the industry that you're in and just everything that's going on as you're on this kind of rocket ship of growth, it seems like. And so I would love to kick off this conversation by bringing people into a little bit of that story. So if you could just tell us a little bit about the company, what you do, and maybe a little bit of the path you're on or the growth trajectory you're on today.
Yeah, happy to do so. And just thank you for this opportunity. Much appreciated. And here we go. So BZI was founded about 20 years ago, and year 10 kind of did a complete and total transformation with a little bit of ownership change and a whole new trajectory of where they wanted to go as a business. And so for the last 10 years, we've been under the leadership of our CEO, James Barlow, and our Chief Operations Officer, Thomas Harker. And these two are the real deal. These guys are very passionate about what they do. Whether we were putting up steel or if we were building houses or pouring concrete, Jason, these guys are all about people and the whole process of developing people. And by the way, we put up steel and we make some money at it too. So that's kind of the fun thing about what we do at BZI is I feel like we're very focused on the people, and the construction projects that we do are coast to coast. So think of Amazon fulfillment centers, chip factories, auto manufacturing plants, cold storage warehouses. Right now, we're doing some of the largest aerospace projects that are happening across the country right now, with household names that everybody's familiar with. And I won't mention them by name because I cannot, but suffice it to say, we have a team of 1,200 employees coast to coast working all across America building infrastructure. Locally, right here, we're based and headquartered in Cedar City, Utah. This is where we were founded even, Iron County. And it's kind of a funny story because we are such a small, remote, kind of obscure town in southwestern Utah. And so when you think of kind of the $1 billion to be steel, sixth largest steel contractor in America, you kind of think of more major cities. You don't think of little old southwestern Utah. And that's something that we're very proud about. Very big lift economically in our region. We employ over 400 of those 1,200 people are right here in Cedar City. And many of the people in the field working on the front lines either have roots from this area or have joined us along the way wherever our projects were. So that's a little bit about the company, where we're going as far as size.
There's so many layers to that I think are really cool and we'll get into, and I think it'll be revealed as we go through this conversation. A lot of the layers of what makes your organization interesting. I think the commitment to people and certainly the impact on community are two among many. I know you have been growing quite a bit, and we were talking about that. You and I were sitting together at lunch during the event, and you were kind of talking about your story, and then somehow, and I don't remember how we got to it, but we got to talking about sort of brand and culture being sort of two sides of the same coin. And we kind of started down the path and talking about this. And I think you and I aligned on how we think about this in a lot of ways. So that's kind of what I wanted to dig in to, because your journey, I think, related to those and that coin with those on both sides is really interesting to explore. So let me start by asking you first to share, how do you think about or understand kind of the relationship between culture and brand? Like when you're thinking about it, especially, it's not often I get to have a conversation with someone that's in the CMO seat talking about this. Often it's people from the culture side, the HR seat. But I would love to hear, how do you think about it?
So, one of the ways that I think about it from my lens in marketing, we represent the business, its capabilities, its services, its offering, what it is to the world. And when you say, what does BZI offer to the world, we're really saying, what is the talent that you bring to the table? And that's the people. It's our people who are attached to that purpose. What is the purpose? And if I may, I'll actually share the purpose of BZI. Specifically, our purpose is to create high value and opportunities for people who can build a thriving community. In fact, if I kind of restate it in a better way, I would say, specifically, line for line, it is the purpose of BZI is to create high value opportunities and build a thriving community. So again, like I said, we could be doing concrete, we could be building doors or windows. It doesn't matter. The goal of what we offer to the world is to create a high value opportunity, whether that's a partnership with someone or with our own team members. And so our brand of BZI is already human centric. It's about the people. And so I would even say one of the unique ways that we train people, when we invite people to come and get a job with us, you don't have to have prior experience as an iron worker. You don't have to be a welder or an experienced, person in that fashion. There are some things where we need credentials and we need degrees with our engineering and other things, but primarily the gateway into BZI is very much bring who you are, what you have, and let's build something great together. And I think that's why our brand and our culture kind of are synonymous with one another. And that's kind of the lens that I look at it through.
Well, and I think this is where our conversation got really interesting, is you shared that while the company is growing like crazy, you did have kind of an experience over the last couple of years where you as an organization recognized that your culture was starting to drift a little bit, and that was starting to have an impact. You were starting to sort of notice that or feel that, or you were getting some feedback. And so I'd love for you to just kind of share what happened and how did you know or start to know that things were starting to drift? What was showing up?
Yeah, this is an incredible opportunity to share that I think that a lot of organizations, they actually experience and they go through. I hate to call it the cliche just growing pains, but it really is a maturing of any organization to kind of start with the few, you kind of become the many, and now you're this huge organization. And as you grow, what often happens is your touch point to the people who kind of started everything gets thinner and further away. And that's really the story of what's happened at BZI over the last, well, I've been here nearly 4 years. And when I started, we were a team of 325-ish. Today, we're 1,200. In 4 years, we've quadrupled the size of the company. And it seems like every day I spot a new face on our team's chats, and I'm like, oh, who's that? I don't know them. I thought I knew everyone. Marketing is always working to know everyone and connect with them, right? So as we've kind of reinvented, we're like a totally new business every 2 years, it seems like. And because of that, the pace at which things move is kind of breakneck speed. And we're getting amazing things done, but kind of along the way, if you're not keeping up with that, or we didn't have systems, here's kind of the problem personified, right? processes and systems in place that didn't really leave people behind, because we weren't leaving people behind because they didn't care. We were just moving so fast with so few things in place to secure that we started to dilute that culture, the trust, respect, integrity. These are our values. The team motto of teamwork, innovation, action. These things started to kind of falter a little bit, because now when we have a new leader in place, 5 years ago, this leader has been a direct, co-worker with the founder for many years. And you grow a little bit more, and now this guy who's the new leader, his next leader that he's put in charge is already now further removed from him, and they have a relationship. And now we're to the point where we have tremendous leaders who are not only two or three, they're four relationships removed from this source of what made BZI great. And here's the hardest part to admit, and we're open to admit it. Our clients started saying, "Where's the old BZI? Where's that BZI that we love, that we used to have experiences with?" And it's not like we were just outright failing. In some cases, probably I would say we've had some pretty bad failings. But what they were really saying is, where is this team that we grew up with, that we kind of said, gosh, who are these guys? They're our guys. What happened? And as we noticed that, there's this full circle of culture, client experience starts to degrade. What happened next was profitability. Profitability began to degrade. And now we're over budget, or we're not responding in the ways to RFIs, and the process of construction. We're not as efficient as we once were. Really, not because people didn't care. They all cared, but they were so junior in their leadership and in their role. They're kind of swimming and trying to find their footing as this new leader and build their team around them. And we just didn't have it there. And so it diluted.
Yeah. So once you started to feel that, right? So obviously it slowly degrades. Like that's the tricky part about all of this work, is that the culture doesn't like overnight change. It changes over time. And so once you finally started seeing all these warning lights going on that something was happening, like what happened next? What was the, once that was like, okay, we need to do something here. I'm curious what that looked like. How did you decide what to do as a leadership team, and what did that look like?
Yeah. So we regularly kind of have set a cadence for the last 2 to 3 years, I would say, where our CEO, all of our leadership team, there's roughly 65 of us who are considered kind of our top leadership team. And we had already had this cadence where we sit down. What's our strategy this year? How are we going? What are the OKRs? What are our key points that we're gonna go and achieve? And then we'll group up 6 months later. How are we doing? Are we checking in on them? Really kind of benchmarking and saying, are we getting there? Are we hitting the mark, or do we need to adjust? So back up 2 years, and everybody's like, yeah, we're doing pretty good. Go to our July summit, and well, let's just say nobody was in the room yelling. This is not our organization. But let's just say the word was sobering. We're all coming out of this meeting, and it felt heavy. It felt like we are not really doing a very good job with all of these things, right? It was a very sobering meeting. We weren't afraid to rip the Band-Aid off, or to rip the scab off, as it were, even, and say, we've got some struggles. Let's get clear. Let's get clear on them. Let's get clarity. Let's go all the way to the root of each of these problems, whether it's in marketing or IT or in project management or estimating, whatever the department is. Let's go get clarity, because we're not going to be a mediocre business. We could choose to just do what we are. We're still a great company, and we can be mediocre. And I remember the words, they cut like a knife. James Barlow stood before us, and in his just very calm demeanor, and he is a very calm CEO. He's not a loud or boisterous man. He just kind of folded his arms in front of the group, and he just said, "Are we going to be just average, or are we going to be the best?" And he said, "I'm telling this group right now, I want to be the best. And I hope you do too. And let's get there." So that was a very sobering moment of like, hey, wake up, Spencer. This means you and your team. It's my buddies next to me. It's my guys over here. It's everybody in estimating. And we're in this meeting saying, okay, we're not broken, but we got some issues. Let's not let the wheels fall off yet, right? Like we can see them wobbling. So let's slow this car down and and zoom out. And I think that was the transitioning moment, was July of last year. And then when we met in October, everybody had their plan. So that was the challenge. James laid it down. He said, okay, it's July today. We're going to meet in October, and everybody's going to have a plan to see our way through this. And then we reiterated that in January and said, okay, it's go time. 2026 is the year that BZI provides a top culture, a top client experience, and we're going to be more profitable than we've ever been before on every job across the board, in spite of the headwinds and the challenges and all of the things that we have in front of us. And we can do it. We just have to decide that we're going to do it. And that's where it all started.
So when you started, the team started digging in and looking at kind of what had happened, right? The drift had happened, obviously. It happened probably across the board in a lot of different places. I guess, what were the biggest things that you noticed had happened? And then what were the levers that needed to be pulled to kind of get you back on track, or to basically sort of put things back kind of on the path that you needed them to be on?
There's a lot of facets to the business, but I would say we'll just keep them pretty generic for the sake of storytelling, but we'll just say disciplinary action among even just our frontline workers, where we have maybe experienced an issue where we had to have a disciplinary action for some kind of behavior or violation of a company policy, where we once had onesie twosie, maybe half a dozen in an entire year. We were seeing this happen 2s and 3s and 4 times, half a dozen times a month. So there's the human aspect and the trickiness of balancing kind of the workload. And what we also recognized was, like, we've never had so much work. We've never been so secure in our own work and our revenue flow, but we've never had such demands on the team. And we're like, okay, so it's not just team members slipping. This is the demand of the work. Well, let's focus on the work now for a second. So we know that the team's kind of stressed. We've got them revved up to like full roar. And then we're looking at the aspects of the project itself. And things are not happening the way they're supposed to. Bids and estimates are not coming back accurately. So now, instead of saying, oh yeah, we had this margin built into what we're doing, and anybody who's worked in steel construction knows the margins are razor thin. There's a lot of incredible erectors and fabricators out there. It's a great business to be in, but the margins are razor thin, and you've got to be top of your game. Sure. And our margins were slipping. In fact, what we saw was that, to the point where it wasn't just now that we're not going to make the profit that we wanted, we're not going to make any money at all. And even worse, we're not breaking even. We are losing money now. And we had, of the 40 projects that we did last year, we won on more than 50% of them. We hit our targets. But if you only win on 50% of your projects, you're gonna struggle in the long run, right? And some of these projects, they very much slipped to the point where we flat lost a lot of money on them. We're talking to the tune of not hundreds of thousands, but millions, several millions of dollars of losses that we experienced because of all of these factors that came into play. The team's under more pressure than they've ever been. We've got more work than we've ever done, and we're not making even as much money as we ever did before when we had half the revenue in the backlog.
Sure.
And the lever pull really kind of said, this is not estimating, this is not business development, this isn't marketing, this isn't project management. It's not one group. This is all across the board. Everyone's structure needs to take a pause and level up. And the reason for it was I could only relate in this way. James Barlow and I were in a one-on-one, and he just said, "Are you $1 billion CMO?" If Coke or John Deere or some other major billion-dollar brand had an opening for their chief marketing officer position, would you apply? And would you feel like not only apply, but that you'd be in the top 3 candidates and then win the job? Do you feel like you're ready to do that? And I'm like, no, I don't feel ready. And he said, neither do 100 of our other leaders. And we are an organization that is at that level now. We need the discipline. We need those skills. We need to dial in and take extreme ownership of who we are, what we are. We're not just working in the business, we're working on the business. And he said, let's get the owner's seat perspective in our leaders. And that was the challenge that was laid down. And then when they brought it all back, in January, he flat said, did you read the book? And we read the book, Extreme Ownership. Fantastic book, by the way. Had no idea until I'd read the book what they accomplished over there, but how it all applies back to us in taking ownership of our own personal outcomes, then our team and their outcomes, and the organization and its outcomes. That was a lot of words, Jason. I hope that helped.
No, that I love it. It's a great story. And I think it's such a powerful example of, something that I say all the time, and you've heard me say it, is that, the performance issues that leaders are most frustrated with are almost always a direct reflection of their own behavior and choices and, what they're tolerating. Right. And so it's awesome to hear a CEO say, we need to level up. That's why the organization outgrew us. We didn't grow fast enough to lead it effectively. So we've got to take accountability for that. It's inspiring to hear leaders that will step into that moment. And the beauty of it, and this is what I love about your story, is that when a leader has the humility to do that, some magic can happen, right? And it seems that that's kind of what's happening in your organization. So I'm curious, once he kind of said, okay, we got to all level up, right? Across the board, top to bottom, we got to all level up. How are you doing that? What does that look like in terms of what kind of things are you doing to support leaders in that journey, to encourage, the development of skills and capabilities that maybe you just don't have? That requires some intervention. So I'm curious what you're doing to tackle that.
So I'll give you the field operations perspective first, and then I'll kind of move into more individual circumstances that I'm closer to and familiar with. But I would say James's engagement and the entire project management, the field operations side of the entire business, has invested in, and when I say invest, I mean it. We've spent money and went and found what we consider to be some of the best help in the entire industry. And I want to give them a shameless plug, a shout out to FMI. FMI is a consulting group that specializes in construction and really takes a perspective of is your general, they would ask a question like, is your general superintendent the person who babysits the superintendent and the rest of the front line? And really challenges that question and says, no, your general superintendent is actually this. And if he's not acting like this and doing these behaviors, he's not really a general superintendent. Your project manager, is he acting like this? Is he doing these behaviors or even tolerating this kind of behavior? If he is, he's not a project manager. And to be able to take a perspective from professionals who have seen these problems that we're experiencing, who have found solutions or even just pathways for us to kind of open our eyes a little bit to the things that you're like, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
FMI helped us know what we didn't know. It helped our project management teams, our project executives who are doing kind of a different level of project management, our estimators. They are all now much more aware of what they didn't know. And it's not like, just like James said to me, would you take that position at Coca-Cola or John Deere or some other major brand? And he's like, the reason you say no is because you don't know what you don't know. You need a coach. You need somebody who has, if not lived it, been there, done that, at least experienced it with those who have and learned those lessons and can bring them to you. And so that's the field operations side. FMI and their workflow process that they're helping us with has tremendously, I mean, our guys now talk about man hours and man hours into a project like we actually believe in it and understand it, instead of just saying, oh yeah, that's right, we need to keep those man hours in check, because man hours equals dollars, right?
Yep.
And on a more close, place from home, we have a marketing agency. And, as I'm kind of working my way through this, am I worthy of even being in this role? Am I worthy of this title? Am I living up to it? I flat asked the question, James, why don't we have Jordan, our agency director, be the CMO? He's far better at this than I am. And he said, because Jordan doesn't want to work for BCI. He's building Arcade Partners. He's building his own enterprise. He's building his own team. He's like, Jordan's your coach. You need to look at it that way. Jordan is the expert in marketing. Learn from him. Beg for his, interaction and his questions. And I had the same thing happen with my own team member who's a graphic designer who needed to level up. And so we're like, let's plug into them here. And at one point I said, gosh, James, am I kind of the ugly duckling here? And he's just like, oh, Spencer, we have dozens of people who are connected to the right people, getting the coaching, the counseling, and the information about what they don't know that they need to know. He said, we can't reinvent wheels at this pace, Spencer. We just cannot. Yeah. We need the experts who have lived this to share it with us, and then we need our extreme ownership and our behaviors to match that and then become like them. And that's really what's kicked this whole thing into high gear. I would say, number one, like you said, the humility of the leadership to say, this is where big organizations who've gotten to a certain size either A, begin to fail, or they take a very sobering look at themselves and say, we're going to be the best. Let's go there. And the investment, both personally, financially, and the time commitment to do so, it's staggering the amount of energy that has gone into leveling us up. So
yeah, I think that's the rub, right? Is that most organizations, they hit that point and there's leaders who maybe, even if they can see it or they know that there's some change that's needed, they don't either have the fortitude or the willingness to make the investment. The investment of time, the investment of money, the investment of resources, all of the things. But it sounds like you're starting to reap the rewards and momentum is building and all the things. And so it's a great case study, and I appreciate you being willing to unpack it. So what I'd love to wrap with, and you can, is I guess, to allow you to kind of reflect on what you have learned through this journey, through this experience, in terms of, just lessons maybe that you will lean into going forward, and maybe are lessons that others can learn from, as, perhaps they, in the spirit of learning from others who have been there, maybe you can share from what you've been through some lessons that others can benefit from. So what are some maybe 2 or 3 key lessons that you're taking away from this experience over the last year and a half?
Yeah. So I'm going to say, first and foremost, personally for me, was to be more introspective than I have ever been ever in my career. I'm an optimist, so I grew up on a farm. Lot of disappointing things that have happened on a farm as a kid growing up, and I've adopted this personality of eternal optimism. And in some, for the most part, it's an amazing way to live. But it also gets me in trouble a little bit because not everything is as rosy as my mind and my persona wants it to be. So I get very settled into things. That deep personal introspection of like, hey, you have some reflexes that need some help. Sometimes you talk a little too much. Oh, ouch, that kind of hurts. And this was some, I asked for this feedback from even my
Mhm.
personal coach, my mentor, Jordan, who's our agency director that we're engaged with. And I'm like, ooh, that stings a little.
Yeah.
But you humble yourself to it and you say, gosh, he's right. You know, think about what you want to say before you say it. These are my things that I'm kind of taking away.
Sure.
Add to this conversation rather than saying something for the sake of saying it. There's no need for us to have to feel that way. We all feel intimidated, Jason. I like, whether it's in the corporate C-suite or we're in our own team in the cubicle having an informal meeting. We all feel like we need to contribute something. Be humble and introspective and just say, if I really need to say it, say it. Sometimes I actually write down a lot of my thoughts and I'm like, oh, I'm going to say that. And I write it down and I listen. I'm like, you know what? I'm glad I didn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't add to this, to what we're really trying to accomplish here. So that's the first thing. I wanted to go first and foremost on myself because I'm the
Sure.
only one that can really change me. The organization of BZI recognized the field ops team, and I will credit Thomas Harker, our president of Building Zone, and his right hand man Nate Steed, both in private conversations, separately, not even realizing it, said to me, "We did something in 2025 we will never do again. We built an amazing backlog. We had piles of commitment and potential revenue that we've never seen before. And we hired far more contract labor than we ever should have. Not only did that affect the culture and kind of it was a part of the dilution, we didn't get the buy-in to those values, to that teamwork, innovation, action motto. And so they said in 2026, we're going to stick our necks out there. We're going to go get the same amount of work and those commitments as they come, but we're going to hire the team. We're going to make that commitment to take that leap into not just being last year during the heat of the moment a team of 1,000 people and four 300 to 400 of those team members are just hired contractors. We're going to have all 1,200 of those team members are ours. They're BZI proud. They get everything that BZI has to offer, and we will protect that culture. So I would say the lesson learned there is you're never going to be a contractor as big as we are and not need the help of others. And we are so grateful for them. I hope that anyone who hears this does not say, gosh, I don't think BCI really loved us. No, we did love you. And we appreciate and still need them. But if we're going to be the team that we are, and we're going to make those kinds of commitments, we need to stick our necks out and say, we're going to go get those team members and do what we do best at taking care of them, training them. So that's the second lesson.
Mm.
And I would say the third is that personal accountability component, the extreme ownership. It starts with me, then my team, then this team, then that team, and then collectively this department, and then the entire organization as a whole becomes bought into, if this organization is going to be the greatest, I have to be the greatest at me. And that doesn't mean I have to be the CEO. I don't have to act like the CEO. I don't have to act like the president. I need to act like what I need to be. Figure out, know what you don't know, and then just go do it and love doing it. Because most of the time we're in a role, more often than not, we are in a role that we actually do love. And when we know what we don't know, we'll just do it even better.
Yep.
And then people will want to know how we did it. And then we get to talk about it, right? This is one of the greatest things of your podcast, and really what you do is say, I've had these experiences, I've worked with organizations, and now let's share it. Let's help everyone have the opportunity. It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's a great story, Spencer. I appreciate the candor and the openness and the willingness to kind of share the journey. And I'll remind anyone that's listening that you're, in the midst of this, you're talking about the challenges and the struggles. Like, you are a national top workplaces winner. And so this is you had at least by the metrics, you have a really good, really strong culture in the midst of all of this. And yet, even though you're staying at the top is difficult, right? Maintaining that is difficult as you scale. And I think it's really admirable that you're making that commitment and investing in that culture that got you there to kind of help propel you forward. And I'm really grateful that you're willing to sort of share this story as inspiration for others. So a lot of gratitude for you sharing your story and joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, honored to be on here and share the lessons learned that we've had. It's a fun journey. Grateful for the opportunity. Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah, of course. I look forward to, maybe we'll do hopefully a couple years we'll check in, because like I said, 2 years from now, completely different company, whole new stories probably. Yeah. So we'll mark the calendar for that. And thank you for listening. I hope you can use something from this conversation, and there was a lot in there today to help both your people and your organization thrive. Until next time.